You're on, Bill.
Geez, how do I make this quieter? Well, good morning. Thank you so much for coming out today. As you heard, I work at Raymond. I'll give you a little bit real quickly about my background. I'm not a cyber guy. I'm a lawyer by education. I always tell everybody I'm a recovering attorney. No offense, Jennifer. Never practiced law, got out of law school and got right into the FBI. I did 26 years in the FBI. And most of my time was spent I traveled all over. I moved 6 times, did a lot of counterintelligence work, counterterrorism work, but everywhere in the FBI, even when I was retiring in 2008, everything was cyber related. We didn't work a drug case, a white collar case, a counterintelligence case, where we didn't have to worry about how the bad guys were keeping their data, what they were doing with information, how they were communicating with each other. And I always like when I talk about presentations like this as a threat expert to find something current as to what's going on here. Did anybody watch the news yesterday and talk with Attorney General Barr and his discussions with Apple? We have the phones, I still say we, it's not my FBI anymore. But they have the phones from the Saudi terrorists down at the military base in Florida. And during their arrest or whatever, the phones were damaged. Well, Apple has the ability to break into those phones. The FBI no longer has the ability to get into those phones because the devices are so protected. And Apple is telling the government, you can't get in. With subpoenas, with court orders, with whatever, we're not going to give you the access to these things. So, and this is one side where we talk about cyber and how it's used and how these individuals communicate and how hard it is for law enforcement to break the code and get in where they have to. I don't think this is going to work. If I get too quiet, just let me know. If you can't hear me, just let me know. But I'm a parent too, so I can talk a little bit here too. So we talk about those things. So those are the threats that are out there here. My presentation today is not how to write code, how to enact certain protections for you. It's to tell you, small business owners, big business owners, individual entrepreneurs, how to protect yourself and what the bad guys are doing out there today to get you. The question I always tell people is not if you're going to get penetrated, but when. We do some statistics up there, and I think this will be available to you afterwards if you want it. I don't know if you too, but in 2019, there was a 118% rise in ransomware attacks. We'll talk about ransomware later, but ransomware is the most efficient and effective method for bad guys to get into your system and get money ever been devised. We'll talk about how it gets in over there too here too. They're now, as we talk about it too, it used to be that bad guys, I still use that term here too, bad guys would get into your system, apply the ransomware, and tell you that they would give you the codes to break it for $600, $800, and they would actually give it to you. Now the bad guy arena is far too competitive, and now they're saying, I need 6 figures, I need 100 grand, I need 800 grand, because I'm only going to get one shot at this because Charlie in his mom's basement down the street is going to hit the next guy and I'm not going to be able to get in and get out. So this is kind of what we're seeing here. So if you think you're not going to get hit or somebody's not going to try, you're not paying attention. They're trying right now while you sit in this room. And it's just a question of educating your employees and what kind of systems you have in place to protect yourself. I make some assumptions here that we're in small and mid-sized businesses mostly out here that are out here. And I talk to people all the time and says, well, I have 35, 40 employees. I don't have that much data. I don't have that much money. Why would the bad guys even waste their time with me? This is why, because you're the perfect target. You hold more data than you think about individuals, PII, and even medical information sometimes. And you don't do the things that the big companies do. If I'm Comerica Bank, if I'm Chase Manhattan Bank, I've got a staff of hundreds of people whose job it is to provide cybersecurity. They look at these things, they monitor these things. We all get those calls from the banks about, did you make this purchase? Are you doing the right thing? If I run a small business, who's handling your IT? Sometimes you outsource it. Sometimes you've got a kid right out of college. And what's the main concern of CEOs in terms of IT solutions? Make sure I can get my email. Make sure I get my messages. Make sure I can access when I'm at home at 10 o'clock at night. So if I'm the IT guy right out of college, I want to keep that CEO or CFO happy. I'm just going to maintain the procedures. Cybersecurity is like 15th on the list for most individual IT providers that work for small and mid-sized businesses. So that's why you guys are a target. And the other thing I put on here too, again, not to be insultant, but most small and mid-sized businesses do not understand how devastating it is if you get hit with a cyber attack, how businesses close every day. 60% of small businesses go out of business within 6 months of a cyber attack. 60%. Why is that? Again, I listed. You have to hire me. You have to hire Jennifer. We have to come in and find out. You have to notify your clients. You have to notify your employees that you were negligent in some respects and didn't protect their data. You have to pay fines sometimes. You have to repair the breach. If I'm a vendor, if I'm a client of yours, and now you have to call me or you have to have a law firm send a letter saying, we lost your data, and we'll pay for an identity theft monitoring service for a couple of years and you'll be okay. Now that individual is looking, do I stay with this company or do I go with another company? And now I've got reputational damage. How many customers are you going to lose? A lot. I would look around to somebody that's going to care more about me and my information before I did that. I know this is kind of hard to see. Is there a business that's immune? Not a one. Automotive manufacturers, you're high on the list. Service professionals, accounting firms, law firms, dentists, doctors, high on the list. Healthcare. Educational institutions, how many, I always say this, how many people have a kid in college who filled out a FAFSA form? Where are those forms kept? They're kept in some database at some college someplace, and if I'm a bad guy and I can access that, what do I get? You guys have to bleed on those forms. You put all your bank account information, all your kids' social security numbers, all your PII. If I can get into those educational institutions and find everybody's FAFSA forms, that's a gold mine. I can sell that information and make tons of money. Tons of money. So who's doing it? I joke when I talk about, Igor sitting in the basement in someplace in Russia with a bunch of other former KGB officers, and they ring a bell every time they break into something, but it's not really like that here, too. There's freelancers that do it. There's terrorists, we know for a fact. I mean, some of the talk now, again, we talk about current events, the talk is that one of the greatest fears of government now is that Iran is going to institute cyber attacks on the United States. The state of Texas has documented 11 attempts coming from Iran into their municipal government systems, trying to hack into their systems. Those are usually to do damage, not to gain PII, personal information. But still, I mean, that's where it's coming from. So we see these organizations here too. Industries with suppliers, they exploit weaknesses, they hit governments. The economy is multi-billion dollars. And what do they want? Simple things. They want to know stuff you give away every day. Your name, your address, your date of birth, your social security number, your passwords and your PINs. We see this. I mean, it used to be the social security number was the big thing. And if I got that, your information, I can open bank accounts and get credit cards. I can do all kind of damage with that information here too. But now we're seeing more sophisticated attacks. We're seeing them go after your passwords and PINs so they can get directly into your system. They learn more, and then they grab with both arms rather than just grabbing with a couple of hands over there to get information here too. Your health insurance information, there's been a significant rise in bad guys targeting health insurance information. There's great value in knowing your health history, having your Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Anthem, whatever, information so that that's sellable. I never knew there was a market for healthcare goods, if you will, everything from canes to wheelchairs to oxygen tanks, everything like that, but there's an underground market because people steal the healthcare information, they go gather this stuff, and then there's a market for sale of some of these items afterwards here too. If there's a way to make money and monetize information, the bad guys know how to do it. So you have to protect that. And what do they do with it? We used to see 10 years ago when I retired from the FBI and I started working on this thing here, that we would see that the bad guys would steal the information, the PII, and they would attempt to monetize it right away. They would get your information and then apply for a credit card or a bank account and use it. They would get things like runners. They would get, if I had your PII, I could make 200 credit cards, and then I would parcel them out to 200 people, pay them all $200 a day to open accounts or to go to Best Buy or go to Home Depot and buy things and give it back to me. They made money, and I made money, and it was all not discoverable for weeks at a time. Now we're seeing the real money is getting the information and selling it to other people so they can do whatever they want with it. So I'll get the PII, and I'll just steal it and put it on a shelf someplace. We actually have people that monitor the dark web, and then they've been able to identify. We just saw on the dark web a cache of information, and we've been able to narrow it down so that we know where it came from. And then they'll alert the FBI. There are firms that do this just to find out here too. But instead of using it right away, they keep it and they put it on a shelf. And then when they need it, they need a couple of bucks, they sell it. When we saw the Home Depot theft of proprietary information, they were using it here too. And the day before the announcement came out that we had been hacked, and Home Depot waited far too long to make the announcement that they lost everybody's PII, the price on the dark web for somebody's PII, your social security number and date of birth and name and everything like that, those accounts were going for about $21 per account. And then after it was made public, they went down to about $3 an account because they have no value anymore, because they think that the people then were going to get theft ID, theft protection, and monitor it a little bit more closely. So we can actually track where that's coming from. And I hate to be critical of Home Depot and Target, but their delay in publicly announcing that they had been hit impacts your PII and the dissemination of your PII. I've been hacked. My information's out there. I'm a retired Fed, so OPM's been hacked. My wife shops at Target. We lost our identification there. Equifax was hacked. Anybody have a credit card in here? Your information's been out there. Anybody that thinks that their PII is not out there someplace is mistaken. Maybe if you're the Unabomber and you live in a cave, that's about it over there too here. So they attain all kind of information. They steal from bank accounts. If they get your password and PIN especially, we're seeing more of that. This is a change we've seen in the past couple of years. Again, when I talk about how they used to get in and monetize it right away, now we're seeing bad guys get into your systems. They compromise an email. We'll talk about how they do it, whether they're phishing or whatever else, and then they just sit there and watch. They port themselves on your network, and they'll watch and learn. You think about all the emails and communications that you have with your staff. They learn private information so that they can better compose emails. They learn who the decision makers are so that they know who's best going to be able to be hit. They learn where the weak links are, because some people keep doing the same things day after day at work in terms of going on social media or having weaknesses in their systems. You can sit there for a long time and learn all kinds of things. And this is what the bad guys are doing. They're looking for weaknesses. They're looking for authority. They're looking most especially for who authorizes stuff, bank transfers, who your clients are, who's moving, who's overseas, because they know how those communications go. We see a lot of that in the automotive industry. The suppliers, you deal with overseas banks. Every transaction usually has a different routing number at a different bank, especially in China. So they watch this and they use that to their advantage. I put this up here just as a quick postmortem of what happens to small businesses if you get hit by an attack, whether it's a ransomware or an email compromise. In the first month, you get bad publicity and you have to do the repair. You have to bring in a firm to clean everything up, make sure they're not still porting on your systems. Your second month, you're looking at the lost data and any money that's gone out, and you have to worry about that. In month 3, since you've been talking to Jennifer, you now have to decide the manner in which personally identifiable information has been stolen. And there are different rules in every state as to when you have to provide notification that, again, hey, Bill, we lost your information. If you live in Michigan, there's a specific law and rule as to when I have to notify you if I'm a business that I lost your stuff. If you're in Massachusetts or California, it's much different. And there are lawyers that are experts in this area and different notifications. And if you think you don't do business everywhere else, you're wrong. If you get breached and you had an employee that worked for you 5 years ago that you're still sending an annuity check to, or you still have in your system, and now they've moved to Florida or North Carolina or Arizona, and now their information gets taken, you owe them some protection too. They're still in your system. Their stuff gets stolen. So even if you only have 50 current employees, you may have 300 current and past employees that are in your system and have information. Then there's litigation costs because somebody might sue you. I don't know why that might happen here too. Then you have lost reputation and lost clients. This is not an uncommon occurrence. This is how it works. And all that time you're sitting there trying to run your business, trying to keep things moving, and you've got this headache going on behind you. Employees are the problem. Employees are the problem. I mean, Raymond has pretty good rules. I have folks from our IT solution groups here too. We spend a lot of time and focus as an accounting firm, as an investigative firm, as a financial management firm in making sure our employees know where the rules are, where they can and can't surf, where they can access, how they can remotely access their devices, when they use VPN and things like that. Not all companies are that way. I'll tell you flat out, if you're ever in a Panera and you access your work accounts from a Panera without using a 4G, an independent 4G and some VPN access, you deserve to get hacked. Every time I go in Panera, I look around expecting to see some 21-year-old kid sitting in the back on his computer with his backpack sitting next to him. And everybody thinks he's reading yesterday's sports scores. No, he's waiting for somebody to log on so he can port on it and find out what they're doing out there too here. So we see employees, they don't secure their mobile devices. Again, I mean, I have 2 cell phones that one I use for phone calls and the other I use for everything else. I have an iPad. Your employees are the same way. Think of how many devices you have. Are they all secure? Do you use the same password on all of them? Do you pass them around to other individuals? Are they insecure? Do you have a corporate policy as to when you can remotely access your company or anything else? How many people, I can't tell you how many cases in the past 10 years we've gotten that once we go in, we find out that I wanted to work at home and I didn't have the ability to access all the information I had at home. So I copied an Excel spreadsheet and I emailed it to my Gmail account. And then when I got home, I'm going to open it on my Gmail account so that I could work there. I mean, you just open the door for the bad guys. Gmail accounts or Yahoo accounts, everything are so inherently insecure here. To the reason we have work accounts and we provide that access is to provide that security over there too. So we see employees doing this all the time. And then social media. God, I love social media. I'm an investigator. Social media is great for me because I can go on. I can learn more about people. Well, I can't, but my team can. I can get on Facebook accounts and LinkedIn accounts legally. It's all open to us. And I can learn more about people and businesses by doing that because people talk too much. I talked recently at a high school and I asked one of these kids, I says, how many people care what the person sitting next to you had for breakfast this morning? And I mean, where you were. I mean, today's millennials, there's not too many in this room, so I can say this. I mean, I don't care where you're eating breakfast and what your steak looked like for dinner or your, not even a steak here, quesadilla, whatever kids eat these days, I don't know. Now, I'm a grouchy old man now, so I can say that here too. But they post everything. They pick up their phone or their mobile device, and then they go and they grab a quick sandwich and they're checking all their social media accounts. Who's doing what? Who's friends with who did the latest thing? And they're telling everybody anything. I'm the mean uncle on social media because one of the rules I have with all my brothers and sisters and my wife's brothers and sisters is that all my nieces and nephews have to friend me until I find out that they have secondary accounts. And that's always fun when I find out that here. So they have to friend me and then I see everything they do. And, you know, like one of my nephews recently was at a party, a frat party. He goes to school at Loris, a good school out there too, and he posted what a good party it was, and he met a lot of people. He didn't do anything wrong. But then underneath it, one of his friends posted about how, hey, we met this girl and this happened afterwards, and then there's some bad language in there. So I called him and said, that impacts you. That impacts you because I'm an employer, and I get hired by you all to do backgrounds. And when I do a background and I pull up your social media check and I find out that you got friends that use derogatory terms to women or to minorities or anything like that, and now the job is between you and somebody else who's got a clean background, who am I going to hire? So you got to think about that. So they do all that stuff. So I'm the mean uncle that tells everybody, don't post that my parents are gone, I'm home for 4 hours, anybody want to come over and play Xbox? Because you just might as well leave the key under the mat for the bad guy to come in. But I'm a cynic, so that's the way I am here too. So we see a lot of this other stuff. And then clicking on, the last I have on there, A, or the first, is clicking on links in email. One of my greatest fears is that here I am and I do these cyber presentations and I go all over the place, and my title is actually Director of Operations for the Raymond Corporate Investigative Group. So every LinkedIn, every marketer, everything sees Director of Operations. I get 10 emails a day. Do you want to test this product? Do you want to work with us? Do you want to do this? And every one of them has a link in there. Some people I know do this. And I said, my IT department is tired of me because I get these emails and I send them to IT and say, let me know if I can open this or not, because I'm not clicking on a link here. Although I sometimes think that if I click on a link and I get the malware into the system, then they won't let me do speeches anymore and I can just sit in my office. But that ain't going to work. Then I have no value, so I worry about it too. So when you get emails, when your employees get emails, and you're going to educate your employees about this, do you know who it is? Do you know who it's coming from? Is it coercive? Do you think my boss would really send me an email and tell me to wire $3 million? It happens. If you think it's not happening, business email, behind ransomware, business email compromise is the second fastest growing cyber threat out there. It happens every day, every day. Lots of money going out there. And is it secure? These are the ways that they get to your employees. They phish. Everybody knows what a phish is by now here too. It's a lure. They put a link on there, something you're interested in. It looks, everything from your Verizon account is under review and we've changed our password system. Please click on this link. Some more sophisticated than others, but people are getting phished all the time still, and they're falling for it. They're falling for it. So you can't do that here. Ransomware we'll talk about more, the business email compromise. I wanted to talk briefly about unpatched systems here too. The Equifax hacked. Anybody know how Equifax is one of the 3 credit card companies, financial companies over there too. They got hacked. They got breached. They lost tons of information. It cost them nearly $1 billion, I think. I don't know what the number is today here too. They got hacked because they didn't patch their system. They had one guy, as large as Equifax is, they had one guy whose job it was to get, when the bad guys find a flaw, and I tease my wife about this, I could tell you a story. When the bad guys find a flaw in the software or the systems, they'll utilize it to gain access. And then the Nortons and the Symantec's and the security companies will send out what's called a patch. And they'll send it to everybody saying, you have Nortons, we've discovered this flaw, deploy this patch, and the bad guys won't be able to get in anymore. Well, this one guy at Equifax, whose job it was to deploy these patches every day, apparently deployed 6 of them on this day and left 1 for tomorrow. It was 7 days before he deployed that patch, and the bad guys were able to get in and get all the information since then. When I talk about it, I joke with my wife here too. I never use the computer at home, but I happened to over the holidays, and then I turn on her laptop computer, and in the bottom is blinking, your Norton's antivirus software requires updating. So I says, how long has it been? She says, oh, that's been blinking now for about 6 months. I says, oh, you still doing all your banking? Did you buy all our Christmas presents on Amazon? Yeah, I did that. I says, do you understand what that's for? He says, yeah, but when you download that stuff, it takes like half a day and it's a pain. And I says, babes, this is why they send it out for you. That's a patch. They've discovered a flaw. You got to use that stuff here too. And she doesn't talk to me for about a day, which is bad. It's a bad thing. Yeah, so This is ransomware. Anybody, I hate to put anybody on the spot, but if you care, anybody been a victim of ransomware or an attempt? Yeah, there's a couple people out here too. That's about right in a room this size here too. In just very simple terms, ransomware works. Again, first thing is employee misconduct. Employee did something, the bad guys get into your system. You leave on Friday afternoon, you come back on Monday morning, and this or skull and crossbones or something else is on one of your monitors. All the other monitors you can't get in on. So the bad guys send this message out saying, we've corrupted your files, we've encoded them, you want to get your data back, send us whatever. It used to be small amounts of money, now it's 100 grand in Bitcoin or some cryptocurrency. Anybody here know how to pay with cryptocurrency? I don't. There's one guy, he's the guy we call. Yeah. He's the guy we call here. So you have to figure this out. Is your data backed up? What did you lose? Do you want to pay? Do you call the FBI? Do you call law enforcement? What do you do? When's the last time you backed up your data? So this is what they do here too. Our recommendation is always to call law enforcement. Chances are they're not going to do too much because they're getting bombarded, but they'll at least keep a record of it, and they may make an attempt to say, well, you're in the same group with 10 other people who got hit last Friday. But you have to decide, are you going to pay the ransom or not? It's a lot of money. If you have cyber insurance, which we'll talk about a little bit later here too, your first call should go to your insurance provider and say, what are the next steps? Do we need to get a lawyer involved? Do we need to get a team involved? Can we get our data back? I used to tell, when I did these presentations, I used to say, the best way to stop ransomware from being effective is to back up your data. At Raymond, I think we back up our data every 4 hours or 8 hours. I don't know here. So if we suffered a ransomware attack, we could shut down the system, reboot it, and pull up all our backup data. It's not quite that simple because backup data is never in the same format as it was before, but we should only suffer damage for however long the ransomware's been on there. Well, now we see the ransomware, the bad guys are taking this information, and if you say, I've got backup, I'm not paying you, they're extorting you. They're saying, well, that's fine, but we're going to publish all the data that we stole. And we're going to put that out there on the web so everybody in the world can see it. And there might be things there that you don't want the rest of the world to see. So you're going to pay us anyway. So you have to make those decisions over there. I wish I could tell you, don't pay ever or do pay ever, but these are personal decisions, and you have to decide how much you've lost and whether it's worth the price of paying. 1 in 5 small businesses who pay the ransom don't get their data back. So when you pay the ransom, you're supposed to get a key back that decodes it so you can get back up and running. Well, the bad guy world is a competitive world. And it used to be that there was honor among thieves because they figured they get their few $100,000 or $100,000 or $10,000, and then they would give you the key back because they don't want to be known as the bad guy that broke a bargain because the next guy won't pay. And that way, if word gets around, it says, Bill Kowalski put a ransomware attack on us. We paid him and we got the money back, so at least he was honorable that way. So then when the next guy gets hit and they checks, does Bill Kowalski actually give us the key back? The answer is going to be yes. Well, now they don't even care. It's so competitive out there. They're taking the money and they're running, and 1 out of 5, and that number's growing, don't even give you the key back. So you could pay and still be screwed. And this is what I talked about here. They're getting meaner by the day. They're not actually, it's mean, but it's competitive. They're taking the information and putting it out there on the web so everybody in the world can see it. This is a business email compromise. This is kind of what there's a lot of, some people call it social engineering, a lot of different things it refers to here too. Let me see if I can do this. This is an email from me to one of my associates, Eve Burton. And the subject is, if you can't read, I think you have this in front of you here too. Eve, conference is great, a new contact. I will give you the card Monday. Please wire $50,000 for our first gig. And I give a routing number, although I misspell routing, which is not uncommon in my emails, and the account number. And then I put, hope your mom's surgery went well. Thank you, which I always use TY in my emails because it's too much time to spell out thank you the way I type. And I send this to Eve. Now Eve gets this, and she knows I'm gone. She knows I'm at a conference. The bad guys know this. Why? Because they've been sitting in my system for, 200 days. How do they know that Eve's mom just had surgery? because they've been sitting in my system for 200 days monitoring our emails. So when Eve gets this, she says, well, this is a little odd coming from Bill, but who else would know about my mom? Who else? I mean, I know he's at a conference and I'm the right person to talk to, so I'll go ahead and send the money. So I send the money, so she sends, wires the money on a Friday. I come in Monday morning and she says, I need more information on that new client or that new contact. And my response to her is, what the hell are you talking about? You think this wouldn't happen? It certainly wouldn't happen because Eve knows enough to pick up the phone and call me and say, Bill, did you just send me an email? But this happens every single day. I gave this presentation in August to a group similar to yours, and it wasn't 2 weeks after the presentation, I got a call from one of the individuals who says, I was at your presentation and you discussed a business email compromise. Thought I was pretty interested, but I was never going to be a target. She says $275,000 went out the door on Friday night. Exactly the way you described it. And she says, they even talked about my boys' soccer team, just like you used this example of Eve's mother. She says it was phenomenal, and she says it went, and it happens. So how do you stop this? Simple things. We call it dual authentication. Pick up the phone. Call the banker before you route the number and say, hey, have you seen any of this activity? Check with your IT department. So now, one of the things, I don't know if I showed it here. I don't know if the laser works. You can see on here, if I used to be able to hover over the email on this message. My email is bill.kowalski@raymond.com, but when you get an email from me, it just says Bill Kowalski. But if you hover over the email sometimes, although they're getting more sophisticated on that now too, you can see that this was bill.kowalski, but the I was a numeral 1. Now, if you're Eve or somebody else, you can't see that, and it looks like a real. But we're seeing more and more the bad guys are actually they're porting on the legitimate email. And what your person, Eve, might take, if she wasn't schooled in this, might respond. Instead of picking up the phone, what do? They send an email back. Boss, this is really odd. This is out of the ordinary. I don't want to wire this money. Should I really do it? Well, who gets that email? The bad guy. Of course you do it. I'll explain it to you Monday. Don't worry about it. And then they delete it, so I can't see it if it's there on their real email. But we see this happening every day. It's usually an urgent message. It's got to be done right away. And it's a spoof domain. It's a wire transfer request. In 2018, we had $9 billion in losses from business email compromises. When you do this and you lose this money, you're going to get it back from the bank, right? No. Is this the bank's fault? No. The bank is just following your orders and your instructions. This is user error. The bank will work with you. We had a case, I was telling Brett, we had a case just before Christmas where a guy called me and says, we were this close. We were this close here too. We got a business email compromise. They used my identity. They sent it to the controller. She wired the money. The bank called us back because she made the mistake. She transposed 2 of the digits in the routing number. The bank called and says, this number's not valid. And they started asking questions, and then they figured out it was a business email compromise. But for her error, that money would have walked out the door. So there is a God, I guess. We talk about the damage done by ransomware. This is one of my favorites. Municipalities, huge target. Educational institutions, huge targets. Again, we talk about their IT departments. Atlanta got hit with a ransomware attack. Their system was shut down. They either didn't pay or couldn't pay or were not given the keys back. Their whole system shut down here too. So you're a 25-year-old employee working for the city of Atlanta, and your boss comes out and says, you can't use the computer for the next 2 weeks because our system is shut down and we can't figure out how to get it back up. Here's some forms. And these kids are all like, I don't know what the hell to do. I mean, I don't know how to do this with a paper trail. Where do we keep everything? The city was shut down for about a 2-week period of time where they didn't know. They spent almost $3 million responding to the attack. And they never did get their data back. They just had to start from scratch. We see this happening over and over again. The city of Baltimore got hit. Synoptic, which is an IT solutions company, posted this a few days before Christmas. Jingle bells, phishing smells, hackers go away. And then they talk about make sure you read on what to look up so that you don't get hacked. 3 days later, Synoptic got hacked, and a bunch of their PII that they housed was out there. And this was a specific ransomware attack used to target IT providers. So if you have you have a contract with an outside vendor that's not Raymond IT Solutions, because we look for this stuff and we monitor it better, and Brian Young's here, he can talk to you about our services there. So they got hit and they lost all the information that they were housing for other individuals. And there are some people that think they did this simply because Synoptic was being a little smarmy and pretending that they weren't going to be hacked. So the bad guys got them. So we talk about, one of the things I talk about now here too, we're seeing more and more, and it's a good system, is multi-factor authentication. I'll spend just a couple minutes here too. We all see this now. We see, how many people on their mobile devices can use a fingerprint? You have to type in a number or type in an email address and something secondary. These are all good things. You have to do them here too. And if you take that away simply for expediency purposes over there too, here you have to understand you're weakening your systems here. They're there for a reason. They're there for a reason here too. I used to talk a lot more on the fraud side about credit cards when we went to chip and pin. What's it been, 4 years now? Europe's been on chip and pin for a while now. You all have the cards that you can just wave or you can put into the card reader, and usually you have to type in a digit or put a fingerprint or something like that. That's two-factor authentication out there too, so that it's more safe. We're seeing a lot less credit card fraud since the chip and pin have actually, chip and pin or chip and signature have actually come into play, simply because it's a safer system. It's a safer system. They went to dual authentication, and there's no reason not to. I'll also mention old equipment here too. There was something about, is it Microsoft 2010 that's about to be, there's another Microsoft Office system that they've just sent a notification out that they're not going to be able to fix it or update or anything anymore. So if you have some of these old systems, you're out of luck. Because you'd be amazed how many times we go into companies and they have older email systems or server configurations, and we see things. What is it about public school systems too? They do this. They hire these people and they put chicken wire and duct tape on their systems because they've got some guy in there that knows how to fix it and change it. And then we go in there to look at it, and it's being held together again by duct tape, and we can't figure it out because they don't have the money to buy the new systems or update a lot of the software. So they just find a way around the system. And every time you do that, it creates a weakness in the system. This is something I wanted to talk about. Third-party organizations and partners have provided configurations that lowered their security posture when transitioning to Office 365 and other cloud systems. So you have to be very careful about this. When you get a third-party provider or a change in your IT posture, even if the cloud is no more or less secure than a server in the corner of your office that houses all your information. It is what it is. It's just a place, someplace there's a machine that has all the information on it over there too. You just have to understand that when you change to a different system, you have to make sure that all the IT configurations and the security systems are updated so that you have all the right information on it. And some of these patches, and specifically, I'll tell this easy to understand story. How many people have security systems in their home now with these doorbell cameras and things like that? Xbox or PlayStation, things like that here too. The bad guys are getting into your houses through these systems. Because most people, when they get these systems, there's a default password that's utilized to employ these systems and to get these systems configured to your residence or anything like that. And one of the instructions is, once it's all done and installed, or you're on your PlayStation or you have your camera up and running, change the default password so that it's private and unique to you. A lot of people don't do it. The bad guys, it's easier for them to get into the default passwords because many of them are used over and over again. They get in there. We worked a case, sorry, I love telling stories, so it's the best way to learn, I think. We worked a case at a high school about 3 years ago where they got a new security system, And the security, they were getting cameras and everything. It was a good system coming in here. But the team that came in was given the administrative password to get into the system. And they made all the changes so that it hooked into everything else that the school did. And they made all the changes and they leave. Well, the class valedictorian figured out that when they left the default the administrative password open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For the 6 days that they were there and the 6 days afterwards. So the class valedictorian says, this is pretty good. I don't need to get into the school system, but I got a bunch of friends who do. He changed attendance records. He changed C's to B's. I mean, the class rank was all messed up. And they wasn't discovered until about 2 years afterwards. He was then matriculating at Cornell University. And they get in here too. And it was all because they got bad guys getting at, was it Target or Home Depot that they had the heating and cooling vendor? It was at Target. The heating and cooling vendor is the one that came in here too. So they had the ability to control all the air conditioning and the heat in all their Target stores from one location, wherever their headquarters is. And that password that allowed them to do that was not changed. And that's how the bad guys got into that, and they got into their pay system from there. And they got all the data. So those default passwords are important. One of the things that I like here too, it's not so important for you now, but it's more important for you if you have an event, is to maintain your audit logs. If you get a new system, if you get Office 365 or any of these systems, one of the things that you tell your IT department, enable the audit logs. Because when a team like mine comes in, if you do not enable the audit logs, your IT people on Brian's team, my team, when we come in, we can't see who's hitting your system. Because what the audit logs do is that every time an IP address remotely accesses your system, it will log it and it will keep track of it. So that I can tell over Thanksgiving weekend, an IP address in Ankara, Turkey, hit your system 934 times between Thanksgiving Day and the Monday following. In the FBI, we call that a clue, that there's something amiss out there too. But if you don't have that audit log, it doesn't come. Microsoft has seen to it that the audit logs do not come enabled, so you have to affirmatively go in there and enable them, so it makes it easier for us. And it makes it easier for your IT people to go in. When I call them and say, I want to see, have you had any strange IP addresses hitting your system? They can go in real quickly and do it here. So that's just kind of an important thing. If there's any IT people in the room, something I look for. We at Raymond have a system, and I admittedly have failed one of these tests 2 weeks ago. We get, once a month, we have a company that serves us, and they send out, it's kind of like, I don't want to call it, it's cartoonish. What's the animated? You get an animated briefing. It takes about 10 minutes to watch it. And it walks you through, if this happens, this is what a business email company, what would you do in this situation? The value of that is immense. And you have to answer a bunch of questions and take a bunch of tests. You do it once a month, but it keeps up with the latest and greatest. Again, I do this stuff for a living, and I learn something from that every time I go through one of those tests. The cost for this, for you and your employees, is minimal. It really isn't much to have this company. And they've designed it where it actually talks about, it uses Raymond. It uses specific people's names if we have to, so it's easy for them to do. But making your employees educate themselves once a month, it's a good thing. It's a good thing here too, and you always pick up that one thing. Boy, I do that all the time. Maybe I shouldn't do that anymore. So when we talk about employees being the weakest link, this is one way to get around it here too. And then the other thing is, I'm a knuckle-dragging law enforcement thug here too. The greatest thing I miss from not being in the FBI is that other than my kids when they were in high school, I haven't put handcuffs on anybody for like 15 years. I miss that. And you can ask my wife. But I think the best deterrent to continuing bad activity is enforcement of policies. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a company, whether it's a fraud event on an embezzlement or a cybersecurity event where we identify the perpetrator that was violating company policy. And they say, well, yeah, but that's Sophie. You know, Sophie makes great chocolate chip cookies every other Friday, and she invites us to her house for the holidays and everything. We can't fire her. We can't discipline her. Yeah, the hell you can't. because everybody else sitting in every other cubicle or office knows what happened, and they're going to get punished. So you have to, when somebody violates the policy and it costs you a lot of money, you have to do it. We also advocate for social engineering tests. We do this a lot. Our company does this a lot for the financial institutions, but there's no reason you can't do it at your company either. One of my favorites, we don't do this anymore, but we used to actually go into companies and we do what we call penetration tests. We can actually be the white hat hacker, where we'll try to break into the system. We may call and see what kind of information we get. We dumpster dive to see what you're throwing away and see if we get any PII out of your trash. But we used to leave a thumb drive on the receptionist's desk or somebody's desk that said, Executive Board of Directors payroll. Now what employee isn't going to take that thumb drive and pop it into their computer to see how much the boss is making? Once they do, the malware's in. We see everything here too. So then we educate them as to why you shouldn't put thumb drives into your system that you don't know here too. We know for a fact that the Chinese, years ago, when they used to visit automotive companies, that's what they used to do here. They used to get these tours, the Chinese and the Japanese even, they get these tours and they would stand and ask questions of the executives, pop a thumb drive into one of the computers sitting over there, and in a minute and a half, they would download all the information and walk away with a thumb drive. We used to give out thumb drives at events, which we stopped because here I preach, if you get a thumb drive at a corporate event or somebody gives you a thumb drive, give it to your IT department. Say, check this before I put it in my system. Make sure it doesn't have malware on it. And the one I'm pretty hot onto, and I know I'm running out of time, is terminated employees. You got to deactivate them. Who's the most dangerous person you could fire? Your IT person. Because most IT persons, especially at small companies, the first thing they do when they come in is create a back door so that if something goes wrong, they have a way to get into the system to fix it. So when you fire your IT employee, you have to make sure that there's no back doors, they don't still have access, there's no remote access, you got to take everything away from them. My team actually participates in firing, we don't terminate, firing a lot of people here too, and we get all their cards, we get all their access, we take away their 4G cards and everything else, change all their passwords. You'd be surprised how many companies fire somebody and don't even get their keys, let alone disabling all their passwords and all their access to information. We've seen numerous cases where somebody got fired and got mad and then spend the weekend on the website. I mean, how many websites we've seen now, there's some have been public, that they put porn on the firm's website or something like that just to be mean because they have access and they were given access after they were fired. And this is some of the stuff we've talked about here too, about how you patch your systems. I have to take a couple minutes here and talk about cyber insurance, and I know your folks from the firm here can talk a little bit more about it here too. I'll just say flat out here too, if you have a firm, if you have a business with more than 15 employees and do not have a cyber insurance policy, you're reckless. You're reckless. You are the target. I hope I've convinced you that you are a target. Cyber insurance is reasonably expensive. It's not my money, so I guess I can say that. Reasonably inexpensive now. It's not a panacea, but you have to have it now here too. We talk about, there are, and you can ask Brett or anybody else here about the different types of policies that you can have, but there are many policies that actually cover, if you have an event, they'll cover Jennifer's costs and my cost to come in and clean it up. Again, the costs are reasonable, but if you get hit by a ransomware attack or a business email compromise and you call your insurance and say, we were hacked, we were hit, you have coverage where you never had it before. This is quite possibly the fastest growing area of insurance anywhere now is cyber insurance here too. Every firm now provides it, and it provides you great coverage here too. So many insurance policies many insurers will call firms like ours and say, this large company is looking for cyber insurance. They are a good company. They try to do the right thing. Can you go in ahead of time and do a penetration test, do a risk assessment, what we call risk assessments, and we'll go in and do risk assessments so that we can then report back to the company and to the insurance company, man, they're good. They teach their employees. They don't allow remote access. They use dual factor authentication. and then the insurance company will then utilize the information that we provide on our risk assessment in establishing what their premiums are going to be or what kind of coverage they're going to have. So this is a good thing. This is a good thing here too. And I'm a big fan, simply because this is how I make money, of having the riders and having the coverage that allows you to pay for all the services that you have in the event of a thing. Not all policies cover it. You should ask your insurance provider if they do. Anyone connected to the internet should have cyber insurance. Again, I've talked about this already a little bit here too. What are we seeing in the future? Bad guys are way ahead of us. You've seen already in 2019, 118% increase in ransomware attacks. We are now seeing there's so much software available and so many good techniques that they are not solely relying on emails and cyber communication. They now have the ability, the bad guys have the ability to call offices and use my sexy voice to tell my CFO to send money someplace here because they can impersonate my voice. Why are they able to do that? Because they call me and I answer the phone. Or they get me on some video someplace and they're able to copy my phone here too, and there's software available to do that. So then they call people and say, hi, I'm Bill. This is what I want you to do. Send this money. And then there's also the other is failing to meet data privacy requirements. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on GDPR. California, if you do any work in California, you have to protect everybody's information or you have great risk over there too. And I don't know, Jennifer, are you going to touch it all on GDPR or the CCC, whatever it is, CCPA in California? I want to talk about mergers and acquisitions real quickly. I don't know if you're looking to buy another company or if you might get bought by another company here, but one of the things that we've seen in mergers and acquisitions that is very costly, I'm buying a company. I do my due diligence. I'm maybe bringing on the CFO and CEO, so I do the backgrounds on them to make sure they don't have any liabilities that I'm not going to have to accept. I don't spend any time on their IT department. Two things can happen. My IT system and their IT system are totally different. So they're not talking to each other. So one of us has to change, and that costs money. So I didn't accept those costs, or I didn't figure those costs into the purchase of the company or the alliance that we're forming. So that's one thing. The other thing that we're seeing is that how long do bad guys port on your network on average? 200 days. So I'm buying a company, and I don't know it, but somebody's sitting in their network, and then I buy them, close the deal, get a ransomware, have a business email compromise or something. 6 days after the deal is closed, whose responsibility is it to pay all those costs? It's me. It's my company now, so I own it. So we advocate strongly now for a risk assessment to be done, an IT risk assessment to be done on any company that you're going to purchase or have an alliance with, simply so you don't absorb any flaws that they might have in their network. Last thing I talk about here too is cybersecurity too. I wish it was easier. I wish there was one thing I could tell you to do so that you're not going to be a victim. It's not. It's continuous. It's ever-changing. The bad guys are way ahead of us. But you got to teach your employees. You got to do some assessments every once in a while to find out what you have and what you don't have. You have to be vigilant yourself, that you check these emails here. You guys are the bosses of many of your companies here too and everything like that, and the example is set by you. So if you're doing the right thing. And educate yourself here, read up and find out what's going on. Watch the news. You see what's going on here too. And you have to have monitoring. You can't have an IT person whose only job it is to keep the email running, keep the remote access up. Cybersecurity, instead of being number 5 or 6 on that list of what your IT department worries about, it's got to be 2 or 3 at least. They have to devote significant time for us. And it's not a revenue producer. So when your IT department comes to you and says, I need this and this so that we have a stronger IT posture, cybersecurity posture, and you're looking at your profit margin saying, well, I don't have the money for that. Let's worry about it next year. It is a revenue producer because your risk of losing money is that much greater if you don't have IT security. So you have to look at it that way. Any type of security is that way too. Same thing with physical security, although that's not what we'll talk about today here too. So again, I don't mean to scare you, but I kind of do. You should be afraid. The bad guys are out there. You guys have the targets on your back. You guys, some of you have been victims before. There's no easy way to make sure that you're not going to be a victim again, other than continuous vigilance, making sure you're doing the right thing. And I applaud you even for coming to something like this. When you hear from folks like Jennifer, you can talk to people like Brett and Brian and find out what's going on in the world over here too. This education is worthwhile simply because you might go back now and you might tell your CFO or your accounting people, look, if you get an email from me and it says wire money, pick up the damn phone and call me and ask me if it's true or not over there too. Simple things like that too here. So hopefully this education has helped a little bit. And I pray that if we come back here next year or the year after that, we don't have any additional victims out there. Something will be changed, something will be new and different out there. And that's my job, is to monitor this and make sure I can educate as many people as I can about what's out there and how the bad guys are. They're winning about 60% of the time now. We'd like to get that down to about 40 or 30% if we can. So, any questions I can answer for you now quickly? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this, I'm assuming it has something to do with this. We keep getting calls and nobody's there, and I'm thinking it has to do with them trying to get somebody's voice. But we can't determine, it looks like a real phone number, and you have to answer the phone because we're a business. So what do we do? How do we?
The federal, and that's a great, everybody hear the question here too? You're getting calls either at the office or at home. Many times they look like real numbers because the prefix there is the same as where your office is. Those are not necessarily cyber scams as much as they are fraud scams. We're seeing a lot of that now here too. I used to answer the phone. Hi, this is Bill Kowalski. I don't anymore. I don't anymore here too because I don't want to give them my name. Because when you answer the phone, half the time they don't know. Now, I actually got calls at my desk a couple of days ago, and I just said, hello, is Karen there? There's no Karen here, and you hang up and everything, so you know it's fraud here. They're collecting information most of the time here. So whether it's a name,
every day, there's nobody there.
or many of these, and the FBI actually has a website that talks about different fraud scams and everything like that. Many of these calls will ask you a simple question at the initiation of the call: is this so-and-so or whatever? And then if you say yes, that triggers additional information gathering on the other end or anything like that. So I hang up on a lot of these. I answer them if there's nobody there I know and everything. Brian, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, sometimes they're robocalls.
Right.
So what happens if you're an extended period of time and the robocall starts? So you have to sit on this sometimes. It's really want to sit down and see if it's a robocall. Sometimes up to 30 seconds, and it'll get the automated start. So then you can block it. Or report it.
Yeah, and I know the federal government, for a while there, they had, you could put on this do not call list or what.
They don't want it.
That's crap. Yeah, they're now looking at that again. There's more legislation supposed to come out to remove this people or to outlaw their ability to use. The big thing is now, again, my prefix to my phone now, without giving it to you, 656. So I get calls at home all the time, and it shows up on my television, 656. So my wife thinks it's one of our neighbors calling or something like that here too. And most of the time, I just don't answer. That's another thing here too. If it's important enough, they'll leave a voicemail and get back with me. Anything else I can answer real quickly? I apologize. I'm not going to be able to stick around too much.
Or if you didn't mind, I just wanted to say something real quick. To add some
Please,
value to what you were saying.
please.
It's just that a lot of times we
Tell us who you are and what your background is.
My name is Douglas Dew. I'm in information security. I've done security for a lot of different companies, and that's what we do, similar kind of style. Same segment, so I can resonate with a lot of what he's saying. And a lot of people, they talk about the bad guys, but people kind of detach that from the human element. And a lot of people don't realize that, imagine you just graduated from college, you got your computer science degree, and now you go out to work in the field, you're going to take care of your family, now like a year, working for Samsung. Now all of a sudden you can work at night and break into a company and maybe only get $20,000, $30,000, but that could be huge for you and your family. So people that are doing these kind of things, they can be really motivated. So people sometimes feel like, well, our company's not worth enough, or we don't have enough value, or even if the bad guys broke in, it wouldn't be worth their time. It really is worth their time. So.
Yeah, they only need to be successful. I mean, it used to be, I characterize, remember, how many people got a Nigerian prince letter? Yeah, it's the same thing here too. You send 30 million letters out, and if you get one response and make $300,000 off it, it's worth whatever the stamps cost, everything. It's the same thing in the computer industry. If you put all that information out there trying to access data, and you're unsuccessful 98% of the time, it's still worth it, because that 2% of the time that you're successful and you get data and you make money off it, it's worth the effort, especially since on a computer in the cyber world, you can you don't have to sit there and do it. You can teach your computer to send that information out automatically. And we used to see a lot of the IP addresses, the fraud occurring from Russia or the People's Republic of China, places like Latvia and things like that here too. Now they're coming into the United States and they're using IP addresses in the United States here too. Many times your computer might be hacked into not to get the information, but to use your device as a jumping off point so that they can hack other systems over there, so that when the FBI comes in and looks at it, they're going to see Bill Kowalski's computer sent out this message, but it's because the bad guys got into my computer and used my computer's IP address to send other information out there. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if this is your area, zero-day exports, and, you know, as far as the, you know, antiviruses being up to date, or is this something we just can't, you know, compensate?
Yeah, the question is about the virus, the newest, latest viruses and the malware and how you prevent it.
Yeah, because most people are under the impression that, you know, you update your antivirus, it's okay, but in actuality, a new virus or whatever comes out every other day, and so you got, just like you said, you got stuff that's on your network, it's there, but your antivirus says you're okay.
Right. Well, and when I talk about the bad guys being ahead of us here too, there was, I forget the name of this virus here too. It was a very successful virus, long period of time. The antivirus was created for it and deployed by the security companies. Within 6 hours, the bad guys found a flaw in the antivirus and were able to reinstitute the viruses afterwards over there too. So when you talk about zero-day or these viruses, this malware getting transported in your system, which is what allows them to sit and port on your system for so long, it's all through malware and viruses. The bad guys are way ahead of us, and then there are companies working on antiviruses, but as soon as they develop the antivirus, the bad guys figure out how to breach that and get in there too here too. So it's a constant, again, when we talk about eternal vigilance, it's a constant vigilance and having your IT protectors. I'm a big fan, the last thing I'll say, and I guess I'll pitch Raymond here, I'm a big fan of third-party providers. Like Raymond has an IT solution group, which is within 5 miles of this location, I think, Brian, right? Their job is not only to make sure your email keeps running, they host your data, they do things like that, but cybersecurity is number 1 or 2 on their thought process. So if you can find a third-party provider like that who cares about you, has a personal relationship with you, and whose main focus is cybersecurity, you're better off there than hiring that kid right out of college whose job is just to keep the CEO happy, I guess. I don't mean to say that in a pejorative term, but that's kind of what it, from my perspective, that's what I see here. So thank you so much for your time. Oh, one more.